Before we begin, thank you very much to Ganondorf, was the true hero and king of Ocarina of Time. Thank you for joining my Patreon campaign with probably the hottest take I've seen yet. Thank you for that. Everyone's free to root for whoever they want, I guess. But thank you anyway. Thank you for the support. The support does keep me doing this every single day for you people, so I do appreciate everyone willing to chip in, even if it's just a little bit. All helps. So, who remembers a video I did where I pitched some Botcon ideas way after that convention stopped being an official Transformers event? Well, I promised a follow-up video showing you a whole bunch of other repaint concepts I came up with, and never got around to it. So we're doing it again. This is more Botcon ideas suggested 10 years too late, because I think it gets funnier the farther out we get. And this is just going to be like a loose collection of ideas. Unlike the previous video where I had like full concepts and what the story would technically be, here it's mostly just random repaint ideas I had that very much feel like Botcon ideas. I know here and there some of them have shown in videos as I was just like coming up with things, so you might have seen some of these before, but for the most part I think most of these have not been witnessed. So it starts with well, the most relevant one right now. We've saw this in that previous video because I wanted to show off how good the the Beast Wars 2nd Galvatron mold looks using normal and Transmetal Beast Wars Megatron colors. So the one I didn't show you is it looks good as G1 Megatron as well. As it turns out, this mold is just pretty no matter what color scheme you put on it. I was loosely trying for a Death Saurus out of it as well, and that one also kind of worked. I just never got around to finishing that one. But no, like, this is just a pretty mold. I don't know what to tell you. So I naturally decided, what would the opposite look like? What would his version of Primal be? So I went with the Cybertron Optimus mold, and I tried the Nemesis colors, just because, of course you do. I don't like really how it comes out. Granted, this was like over a decade ago. I did these just for fun. Obviously, these are, looking at it now, I used way too much of the teal. It did not need this much. But that optimal, I did not think the optimal color scheme would work that well on Cybertron Optimus, but it kind of does. And I think it's the bulk of that mold that's pulling it off. Like, that's actually kind of cool. I actually kind of like that. I tried for a bit to try to do like a few GoBot ideas. Phytor from Thrust is one of the ones that came to my head. This actually doesn't work too bad. Like, this one actually does kind of feel like the right vein for something like this. And again, like similar to how we have Crasher from Mirage now, I kind of feel like if they do a brand new Thrust mold, this would kind of be the direction to go in for a potential repaint. I think this works. I think you can get away with this. A little bit closer to skirting like Bandai copyright is the Psykill done up from Sideways. Man, I wish we could get away with more of this. I don't know how we get away with Crasher, but something like this escapes us. It'd just be nice to have like one Transformers branded Psykill, because we have like the intellectual property of that character. We do not have access to the physical design, which is usually what holds everything up. But I think you could get away with this. I think legally you could get away with this. It should be noted, none of these were done with any kind of account for what mold colors work where and which parts are molded together, etc. So there's really nothing that says that any of these molds are actually possible to do in these colors. It's just for fun. It's just for fun. Something I thought at the time was absolutely impossible. A Turtle Van. Specifically, it was going to be Energon Tow Line that was redone as the Party Wagon. And honestly, yeah, I think this works too. I think this actually does kind of work in a really weird way. Obviously, we got the real thing, which is kind of incredible. Did not call that. But similar to the Optimal Optimus, I figured if I'm going to do a party wagon, I need to come up with an enemy unit. I need to come up with someone for it to fight. So I took Energon Sharkticon and I made the Shredder. And I think this is brilliant. I think this is absolutely genius. Like, right down to having like an area of the chest on top and in the front make up part of his cape that is the kibble behind him. I'm going to toot my own horn here. I think this is genius. I think this is an absolutely genius repaint, and if they ever did a modern Energon Sharkticon, it needs to be retooled into a Shredder crossover to go with the Party Wallop. They will never do that. They will never do that. And frankly, with Playmates losing the license, I think those deals are all null and void now. You have to take it up with whoever gets it next. Okay, let's move on. There's a few things that there are a few sects of characters and design molds that I did attempt to consistently use. And one of them was alternators, because Botcon never touched alternator molds. So we did 6-shot, Energon 6-shot from the Shock Blast mold. This was done just for the lulz because this looks absolutely horrible. This looks terrible, but also looks like something Botcon would have made in its later years, doesn't it? Far better looking, I think, is the Red Alert, because it's a side swipe. You had to paint it into Red Alert at some point. Obviously, it's not an emergency vehicle, but I decided that if I were to color the internal seats red, as in contrast to the external seats that a Corvette has, or like convertible has, you know what I mean. I figured if I did the seats in red, it would actually give like an illusion that looked like the light bar. So it kind of works. It kind of works. I do think this looks better. I mean, you would not color a Dodge Viper like this, but I do think it works better than I expected. Other alternator ideas. I really wanted a Rapido. Really wanted a Rapido. You guys should know, like, of all the obscure characters, Rapido is the one I like the best. It's the one I want an actual new toy of, because it was one of my first childhood toys that I actually got to buy with my own allowance. Like, this holds a special place to me. So no surprise that I would try to make a modern one, even if it is out of an alternator. To be fair, I did try a few other molds. This one didn't work out so well. I cannot get the Wheeljack out of this mold enough to make this work. And I'm not entirely sure I like him as a old school car, you know, like he has a more sports car look to him. Sports car with a little bit of like souped up like customization, like the exposed engine, which you can see I tried to get there with a little patch of gray. It doesn't work. It doesn't work, unfortunately. But I was trying, I was thinking, just for the sake of doing it, since the head was already there, I decided to see what he looked like as Wheeljack. I think this is an interesting take on Wheeljack. Obviously, the head design works because, you know, Downshift was supposed to be Wheeljack. But I think this kind of like works. If you wanted to redo Wheeljack from like the inventor to like an old school like tinkerer type, I think this would actually work kind of well. If you wanted to like reimagine him as like an older inventor character. As long as I was on G1 characters, let's go through a few more, because there are a bunch of G1 characters. I'm gonna break it up a little bit. But here's a block of G1 characters that I was looking at doing. So for starters, I would never suggest ever using this mold again, even as a Botcon exclusive, but I can't deny that head does kind of work for Jazz in a weird way. So I wanted to see how Sideswipe would look as Jazz. It does kind of work, question mark. I don't know. I think Jazz is just a good looking set of colors, and that head just gets away with it just enough to qualify. I did a silly one, which was Ironhide out of Armorhide, based solely on that naming. I don't think it looks bad. I think this mold actually looks good in these colors. It is just laughable that this mold would be Ironhide being that small. Like this would have to be like deluxe at least in order to make a sensible Ironhide figure. But color wise, I actually thought this was pretty good. I actually liked how this came out. A few others that kind of worked a little bit better than they should. How about Snowcat as Soundwave? Now again, this works better than it has any right to work. I do have a few I have a few sacrifices in the legs. Because the skis I decided to leave white. But for the most part, I think this oddly works because you do have the visor eye, you do have the mouth plate, like the head crest makes it work. Being able to line the torso, that makes it work. It's a weird take, but this was, keep in mind, we're in that era of they can't use Soundwave because no one knows what a cassette player is anymore. So it was a literal free-for-all of like what would work for a Soundwave. And I'm kind of proud that I was coming up with things like this long before they decided this was an acceptable direction for Soundwave consistently. I know. I thought it worked. I thought it was a fun idea. And I liked that the shoulder, like the back cannons, kind of worked like his traditional blasters and shoulder gun. I thought that one also worked too. Trying to go into a little bit more obscure. So I did Elita 1, and I've always like professed that like of what little we saw of G1 Elita 1's vehicle mode, she is definitely a car, and we can see her head sticking up from the top of it, and that just made me think of Override. So I wanted to see how Override would look. This one I think is a little bit too bulky to pass for Elita, but I think the modern Override would be a great fit. And that's a mold that's never been repainted. Like that I think is primed to be a really good Elita 1. I went a little bit too pink here. I went a little bit too pink. I definitely would have gone with a different color arrangement if I were to remake it today. Also, as long as I had this mold out, I decided with that chest, the way the chest is designed, would this work as like a younger cup? The answer, frankly, is no. Like, I like how the colors look on the mold, but you would definitely need a new head to make this work as something. I was basically trying to take the breakdown GTS and basically glow it up. It didn't really work. It didn't really work, but I gave it a shot. I think it technically looks good. Okay. I had a weird little phase of trying to get RID 2001 a little bit of love. So we do Armada Blur as Prowl, which does have a weird way of working. Just a little bit. I think having giant missile launchers helps that a lot. And I also tried for some of my favorite little repaints here. So like Mirage. I thought Mirage actually kind of worked in this color. Now, granted, this is a color scheme that would basically be taken over by an attempt to make a modern drag strip for the All R1 combiner concept that let me use Energon toys. But as long as I was just playing around with this design, I thought, let's see how it looked as another F1 car, maybe one that's a little bit more futuristic. And in that sense, it kind of works, but I also think it's just a hard color scheme to mess up. Here was a funny one. This one just made me laugh. Can I take Movie 07 Bone Crusher and turn it into RID Slapper? It does weirdly work, right? Because you got the big, long slapping arms, okay? Like, you got that squat body in proportion with the super wide shoulders. You have that, like, weird little squashed head. Like, this has no right to work as well as it does, but it just works in a super weird way. Now, I didn't do a whole lot with the instruction sheets for movie characters because they are so much more detailed. They weren't as fun or easy to color in. So I went very sparing with those. There's really not a whole lot of concepts I had. One of the other ones I did really like was taking the long arm mold and turning it into a hoist or into a roadbuster. Because this is a hard color scheme to get right, and I think this mold would actually have pulled it off pretty good. And I do think the hoist head actually works pretty good on this to make this repaint work. Now, I'm just going to throw a whole bunch of random ones at you. As we wind down, I will finish off with an actual set idea. Not a full set, but I'll show you the concepts for it at the very least. So, before we get to that, here's just a random smattering of ones that I did that I thought actually looked a lot better than I thought. Starting with Energon Steamhammer as Sludge. And this was just a funny idea because that big scoop arm I thought would have worked for the Brontosaurus head and neck, and it oddly does. I mean, it's a super weird way of working it in, but I thought it was just a funny one to do. We had Double Dealer. How obvious would this have been out of the Cybertron Defense Red Alert mold? Like, it's a big missile truck. We have very few of those in Transformers. Never really got this one. They did Megatron instead, as we all know and financially regret. So this one I thought was fun. Like, I thought this one worked. Now, obviously, there's no Condor mode, but as a Botcon piece, I think this would have been perfect. One of the ones everyone really liked from the first Botcon suggestion video was using Energon Wing Saber as the Fallen. That wasn't the only idea. I also did one for Dreadwing because I wanted the purples and the teals to complement the colors on an Energon Nemesis Prime and make it kind of poppy more than blend in. And it works. It does kind of work, and it does look good. Also, yeah, again, this mold just looks good in a lot of colors. I like this one a lot. I think this one came out pretty good. Let's see, more random ones. Here is Thrust redone from Cybertron Skywarp because I was trying to use what was kind of their take on a cone head, you know, with that alternate head, the big fin coming off of it. So I kind of wondered why we didn't get more cone head repaints out of that particular design. So I wanted to give one a shot. It does work. It does work. And this did have the VTOLs in the rear fins, so you kind of get a little bit of Thrust vibe out of it. Tried to do Octane in a similar way of like cutting triple changers, because they did that for several triple changers. I actually just... Do I still have it here? No, I moved it. Never mind. I have a Botcon Springer, thanks to my friend Joe. And that toy actually is the same sense. Like, Botcon had no qualms over taking a mode from a triple changer for the sake of getting the homage out there. I thought this one kind of worked. It's a little bit close to Sky Shadow, so I don't think it would have been like the best received, but it's okay. It's okay. It came out okay. I tried to do Rodimus Prime out of Cybertron Defense Hotshot. And again, I think this works on a weird level, but not quite. You know, as an upgrade of Energon Rodimus, this kind of works. And I wouldn't have minded to see this because, hey, every Hotshot mold is supposed to come out in Hot Rod colors eventually, right? Well, we kind of skipped this one. This one actually didn't get a whole lot of repaints now that I think about it. Like, it got a... Yeah, it got a... I just had his name. Why am I blanking now? It had a Roadbuster, and it had, obviously, the Springer. That's basically it. Like, there's a lot of stuff you can do out of this. One I didn't show you is I actually did this as Gundam Heavy Arms. That also kind of works for how many missiles he's got. Dinobot. Just Dinobot. Now, this is playing off the fact that the Japanese version, the Superlink version, is literally named Dinobot. So this was my way of playing up to that. It doesn't look terrible, honestly. I mean, color-wise, paint-wise, this would be impossible to do at a production level. Even at a Botcon level, probably. But as a repaint idea, as a kit bash idea, like there is actually room to make this work. Like this could actually happen. I don't think it looks terrible. Here's one that works way better than I had any right to. Any right to. Here's Bulkhead as Alpha Trion. Now, this one started as just like, oh, it's the old guy on Energon. Let's make him the G1 old guy. This actually blends really well. I think this actually works really, really well. So yeah, this would have been my idea for a Alpha Trion, but no, they went with Vector Prime instead, which is also a good shout. I will admit that's also a good call. Also, if you do this, you have to do that big like arm pack that this toy came in to justify its price point. I don't know what I would have done with that related to Alpha Trion in any way, shape, or form. So maybe best that they didn't go for this one. Here's a fun one. How about Iguanus out of the Ransack mold? I think this is just straight up good. Like I mean, like this is like 10 out of 10 no notes kind of repaint homage kind of thing that they absolutely could have done. Really thinking about it now, I probably should have done a whole run of just pretender characters repainted from this era's molds. Like that alone probably would have done pretty well. But I do really think this one came out good. I think that vehicle mode's perfect for it. And now another one that I think is a little bit more obvious and no one really did it. Nightbird. From an actual bird. Yeah, so yeah, Transmetal Air Razor becomes Nightbird. That's a pretty easy one to go with. I think this would have been prime Botcon material, honestly. So the idea behind her was at one point I was looking at Cannonball, and Botcon kind of did this later on, but I was kind of looking at Cannonball and going, it would be really neat if he had an entire crew of pirates. And for what reason, I kind of thought Nightbird would have worked in that. I guess in the same way that later iterations of Nightbird would be part of like the mercenary faction. So I thought to myself, what else can we do? And we'll do the Cannonball approach. I'll come up with completely new characters for this. So let's see if I can remember all the ones that I came up with. So we had Bildrat, who I wanted I wanted to be a small character. I wanted to have a more toxic color scheme. So, you know, we have these dull browns and like really dark purples. Like he's supposed to look like he lives at the bottom of a ship. Let's see, we had Keel Hall. I wanted to take the typical color scheme for a Seeker and invert it a little bit so the inner colors were brighter than the outer colors. That way, like you have this like different contrast to trying to make it pop differently than a Seeker typically does, so it stands out more unique. Chain Shot. I love the name Chain Shot, by the way. I also think these colors work too. This is only one where I kind of went more aquatic. And you can see like why I picked this mold. It has an eye patch. Or at least it has a spot on the head you can paint like an eye patch. So yeah, my idea was like, let's just give Cannonball a crew. Let's give him more pirates to work with. And in doing so, I also decided, let me throw in one Autobot just to get started on like a counter offense to these pirates. And that is where we come up to the final one I'm going to show you, which is Wavebreaker, redone from Cybertron Thunder Blast. It's too many thunders in my head. Now, if you remember the name Wavebreaker, then you were probably looking at my other older videos from around that era, because Wavebreaker was the name of my Maximal Hippogriff, the aquatic Maximal, as part of my like mythical Beast Wars story idea. I really like Wavebreaker as a character. I wanted to throw her into something else, so yeah, let me see if I can come up with just a use for her. And yes, Thunder Blast was it. I don't know. So this is just like I went down. Someone like inspired me to go down like a trip through memory lane of like a lot of my old folders I never really touch anymore. And as part of that, I started coming across all of these really weird old repaints that I did. I hit the repaint folder again and realized I was always supposed to talk about that again, and then we never got around to it. So here you go. Here's a bunch more that I did. This was just like a lazy day hobby I had for a hot minute. And I don't know, I think some of these still look really, really good. I doubt they're possible to make for an exclusive, but hey, it's always fun to figure out what a repaint project might be. So let me know in the comment section below which one is your favorite. I will say this pretty much drains the ideas I had back then. If we were to do a round 3 of this, I would have to go back to the drawing board and make brand new ideas. So there you go. But it all depends on how people like this one. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you everyone for watching. I will see you next time. Hello everyone, I am Astral Agent Magnetar, a Tokusatsu VTuber, and I am streaming 4 times a week over on Twitch, Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday afternoons, and a special late night one on late Friday/early Saturday. So come watch, come hang out, and let's make an impact together.